Hi there! In this video series, I would like to share the things that I've learned about Pulp while creating my first Playdate game, Magic Castle. Today, I want to explore the JSON skeleton of a Pulp game. JSON is a human-readable format for storing and transmitting data. The Pulp editor uses JSON files for the importing and exporting of games. Let's take a look at a JSON file. This one defines an object with three properties. They're marked as yellow. The three properties are name, age, and hobbies, and each property has a value. In a JSON file, you can define as many properties as you want and make it as detailed as you wish, including the nesting of properties. Armed with that knowledge, we can take a look behind the scenes and check how a Pulp game is structured. Let's export the default boilerplate Pulp game as a JSON file. After we export the game, we can load the JSON in an online JSON viewer. The link to the JSON viewer is in the description of the video. And now we can view the JSON file in a tree format, which should be much more readable. Now we can start dissecting all of the information that we have available. We can start, for example, with the room section. In our boilerplate game, we just have two rooms, the starting card and the start level. And as you can see in the room property of our JSON file, we have two items. We have item 0 and item 1. In programming, counting often begins with a 0. So let's check what we have in 0. We have a room with the ID of 0, with the name of start, with song -1, which there is currently no song being played, so I assume that -1 means that there is no song assigned to this room. There's also the exits property, which has only one item, and in that one item we can see that there are some coordinates and the message that is being, the default message that is being written when you exit the game. And the next one, the next property is called tiles. It has 375 items, which is a pretty important number because when we have our screen, our Playdate screen in the Pulp editor, it has how many? 24, 25. It has 25 tiles from left to right. 25 because it also starts with 0 here. It goes from 0 to 24, which means that there are 25 tiles width. And then we have how many? 15 tiles of height. And 25 times 15 is 375. So basically what we have here is just a collection of coordinates, if you will. And for each of those coordinates, we've got a number. And this number 1, is corresponding to the ID of a tile that is being used on the screen. We can see that most of the screen is black, and that's why most of the screen has a tile that has an ID of 1. If we go into tiles, we can check. We have to find a tile with the ID of 1, and here it is. 1, ID 1, name is black. Now if we explore a bit further, we can see that at some point this pattern of ones is being stopped by a couple of zeros, which again makes sense. 0 in this case indicates the tile with the ID of 0, and that's the white tile. We can count that there are currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 white tiles, and they break up the pattern of ones. So on the left side we've got a couple of ones, and then we have 7 white tiles, and then again we have the black tiles. I can imagine that if I scroll down a little bit, then I will see a similar pattern for the next line, because as you can see it is just going from left to right. But this time, instead of just a collection of 7 zeros, I should get one more number, because I don't have just white tiles here, I also have the disk, and the disk is probably having a higher ID number. So let's check that. Oh, and as you can see, we start with 0, which is this
place right here. And then we've got a tile with the ID of 4. And again, I can go back into the tiles property, which is right here, and number 4 is the disk. And again, I've got some information about the disk. I've got the FPS, I've got the name, we've got the information, what it should say when you pick it up. So suddenly all of the information that you're inputting, using a graphical interface of the editor, this is how this is actually being saved for exporting and then for importing. We can also inspect some of the information that we have about our current tiles. So as an example, we have two world tiles, the white and black one, and they're pretty easy to dissect because it's just a grid of elements, and the white one has only white elements and the black one has only black elements. So if we check the tile section and go into the first one, which is the property 0 with the ID of 0, it has a name of white, which is this one, and then we see that there's another property called frames. And from what I understand, the frames is where the collection of all of our elements is actually defined. So we've got a property of frames with the ID of 0 and a value of 0. So let's check now the frames property. And here we have an ID of 0, and there's the data property. It has 64 items, which again makes sense because one tile in the Pulp editor consists of 64 squares, 8 by 8. So if we check the data, we should be seeing only zeros because all of those positions, those are just coordinates for each and every for each and every square in this tile, and since they are all the same, they should all show 0. The Playdate Pulp editor only operates with 3 values in terms of color: 0 for white, 1 for black, and -1 for transparency. So if we go back into our tiles and then check the black one, we see that the black one also has a property of frames. They all have it, all tiles have this property, and then the item is, the frames property has a value of 1. So if we check that property with that ID, here it is, again we see that we've got 64 items and they're all just a collection of ones because the black tile is just black. But to demonstrate how this looks like for a more complicated tile like the computer, we can just inspect how the computer tile looks like and what is its ID. So we see that the computer has an ID of 3. So let's find it, number 3, data. And as expected, you can see here a different combination of numbers this time, because 1, 2, those are 2 zeros, right? And then we have a black one, which is 1. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 black ones, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then again, we've got 4 white ones, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the next line. So I could go on talking about this, finding correlations between the game and the JSON data, but I'm just fascinated by this topic. It's nice to see how a game is structured behind the scenes. But you might be asking yourself, what is the use case of all of this? Why is it relevant? Why is it important? Aside from morbid curiosity about the whole pulp system, a few use cases where the knowledge of how the JSON is structured can be useful. Here I loaded up my game, and as an example, let's say that we've got this layer section here, right? We've got the player, sprites, items, and world tiles, and they are referenced in the editor property, in the sorted tiles property. So here we have 4 items which correspond to those 4 layers. Exits is not included here. And for example, we've got 43 items on this in this section, 43 tiles in this section, and this is represented here.
And this is nothing more than just a read-only view layer of what you see here. So basically, the property is just the position on this list. So 0 is the starting position, and for the 2 is the last one. And each value here is just the ID of the tile that is being referenced and shown here. So for example, at position 0, the starting position, I have a tile with the ID of 2. So then if I go into the tile section and check the tile with the ID of 2, I see exactly the tile that I'm currently viewing, the player tile. So, you know, in my game there are quite a few. I've got quite a few tiles, 9,572 according to the system. Although some of those are just blank spaces, so maybe not so many. And I've also got lots of duplicates. My game is not as optimized as I would wish in terms of structure. But aside from that, you know, I've got this world section here, and it shows 1,268 items. And that is true. I've got 1,268 items on this list. However, I had a few thousand more, you know, when I was developing the game. Basically, I had so many imported screens and imported assets that this whole list was just one big scroll fest, and it was very difficult to find anything on that list because it had a couple of thousand items on here. So what I did, you know, I still wanted to add more world tiles, but scrolling between them was just a pain because there were huge sections which I didn't touch, and I knew that they would stay in the game. So what I did, I just opened the JSON editor and I removed the first like 4,000 items or 5,000 or even more than that. I just removed everything from here. And what happened is that those tiles, they still have existed, you know. It's not like it's not like I've deleted them from the system, because the tiles themselves live somewhere else. They live here. Their definitions are here and in the frames section. The editor section and the sorted tiles section is just for the view layer of the editor. So to speed things up, so that I wouldn't have to scroll back and forth so much, I just removed most of the ones that I didn't need to view or edit anymore. And that meant that you know, I had to directly modify the JSON file. But then once I saved it and imported it back into the editor, those tiles were gone. So I could, you know, quickly get around, and you know, was left with just a couple of you know, a couple thousand items that I still had to work with, but it was much more manageable. Anybody who works on a bigger Playdate Pulp game will always have to deal with the fact that if you have lots of assets, it's not really feasible to, you know, to go around them, to explore them, because it's just so many things here. It's like Pulp was never designed for projects that have a lot of tiles. It just becomes cumbersome at that point. Also worth mentioning that you know, those kinds of operations, they are quite dangerous, because you're just, you know, editing the core structure of your whole game. And if you make a mistake, even if you just make a stupid typo, like while you know, modifying this JSON file, which is essentially just a text file at the end of the day, but if you make a typo, you know, if you do editors instead of editor, then the graphical interface, the whole application behind, you know, the Pulp editor, will just not be able to parse it correctly, which can lead to very unexpected bugs and errors. So I you know, I do recommend a ton of caution when playing around with this system. I would say that it's best to just you know, work on the default tutorial template first if you're interested. And if you want to leverage, you know, the JSON file for your own game, I strongly recommend that you know, create like a separate game, duplicate the one that you currently have, and then export that JSON, name it, in a way that you will know that this is like a sandbox kind of situation. I've made the mistake of, of just replacing my current manually edited JSON and then putting it back into the game without making any backup. And then the game started crashing and the whole pulp editor started crashing. So I got, I had a bit of a panic attack at that point. I managed to salvage, everything that was wrong and eventually, successfully deploy the game. But like I said, it's just a risky operation. But it can be really, really useful. This one, the example of the with removing of the tiles, this is just like quality of life kind of bonus here. But I have also made a Python script that allowed me to import other assets quickly, and by using a completely different workflow than the one that I've shown in some other video where I talked about importing assets. So maybe if there's some interest about it, then I'll just publish another video about that particular script and how it helped me speed up the development of the game, especially in terms of graphical assets and whatnot. That's all in today's video. See you in the next one.